Big One.
Channel 5, Nashville.
From our newsroom in New York, in color, this is the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite and Eric Severide in Washington, Robert Pierpoint in Washington, Bob Jones in Atlanta, Del Vaughan in Denmark, South Carolina, Conchita Pierce in New York, and Ron Hunter in New Orleans.
Good evening. President Nixon declared today that there can be no compromise with lawlessness on the campus. And he urged school administrators to use their backbones to stand up against student rebels. Robert Pierpoint reports.
The president chose an audience, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, clearly more attuned to his views than to those of most American students. First, he praised the students as the best educated and motivated of any in history, which the chamber did not applaud. Then went on to say,
I think that young people, students, are correct in asking that they have a voice in determining what the courses should be, a voice in determining what the rules should be. But then I say that while they should have a voice, under no circumstances should they be given control of the colleges and universities. That is something else again. When we find situations in numbers of colleges and universities which reach the point where students, in the name of dissent and in the name of change, terrorize other students and faculty members, when they rifle files, when they engage in violence, when they carry guns and knives into classrooms, then I say it is time for faculties, boards of trustees, and school administrators to have the backbone to stand up against that kind of lawlessness in our country. We do not want government control of our great educational institutions. We want to have that freedom which comes from the independence of a great university and college community. But as we look at the situation today, I think all of those who have a responsibility for providing educational leadership must recognize that there can be no compromise with lawlessness and no surrender to force if free education is to survive in the United States of America.
Sunbeams or dodging raindrops, looking for rainbows high on a hilltop, and suddenly, suspended in space, the top of the world is our special place where we play. The good taste of Kent was meant for a day like today.
Hey, what a good time for a Kent right now. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, light up a Kent and let the good taste happen.
What a good time for a Kent.
Campus unrest centered on two southern schools today, predominantly Negro Voorhees College in Denmark, South Carolina, and predominantly white Tulane University in New Orleans. The trouble at Voorhees began yesterday when armed militants took over the first of two campus buildings they were to seize.
When will you return the buildings to the university officials?
As soon as we agree to sign the demand.
What actions will you take if they attempt to force you out of the building?
And we will force the fight. We intend to maintain this building. We have these guns for the purpose of self-defense. If after police initiate any acts of aggression, then we will retaliate.
Is there any chance of a compromise, or must they meet all of your demands?
The demands are non-negotiable.
There's no deadline. You stay there as long as necessary. Is that it?
As long as necessary, correct.
All of you building has guns. The majority of
we have enough of that. We have enough of everything. You know.
Early
Earlier today, Voorhees officials ordered the college closed. Buses were provided to transport students to other cities, but some of them stayed behind. The 75 armed militants who had stolen $5,000 in food from the college cafeteria had urged the student body to unite behind them, offering weapons to those who stayed. The Negroes, members of the campus Black Awareness Coordinating Committee, were demanding, among other things, a Black Studies program, a degree in Afro-American Studies, and a Negro staff member in each of the college's departments. Some of the demands were granted, others were turned down by college officials. Voorhees President John Potts said that he had no plans to use the National Guardsmen, which were stationed nearby. But late this afternoon, the Guard and state troopers surrounded the two buildings being held by the militants, and the armed Negroes walked out quietly. They are now meeting in President Potts' home, a house encircled by armed troops. Bob Jones, CBS News, reporting.
At Tulane, the trouble erupted during an ROTC parade. Story from Ron Hunter of WWL-TV in New Orleans.
Resentment against ROTC on the Tulane campus has been building for 3 months. Today, a group of 50 anti-war, anti-ROTC students brought their feelings to the drill field in the University Quadrangle. They questioned the right of the ROTC cadets to train there and protested by staging a sit-in. After ignoring orders to move back, campus police moved in. Some were dragged to a fire hydrant and handcuffed to it.
The quad is for the students! The quad is for the students! Everybody sit down! That's right! Sit down! Sit down, everybody!
Fist fights broke out between the demonstrators and pro-ROTC students.
Get them identified.
In all, 13 persons were arrested and charged with disrupting a university-approved program. Once the cadets left the drill field, the demonstration ended. This is Ron Hunter in New Orleans.
National Guardsmen were ordered into Cairo, Illinois today after a series of fire bombings and shootings threatened to erupt into racial violence. The worst incidents occurred last night when there were at least 8 fire bombings in the city's Negro section. Police and firemen were shot at when they tried to move into the area to put out the fires. There were no injuries. So far, no one has given a motive for the disturbances, although Cairo has had a long history of racial conflict. And National Guardsmen are on duty in Winston-Salem, North Carolina tonight after outbreaks of vandalism and shootings in that city. Police say the trouble broke out after a Negro was shot and wounded while trying to escape arrest. Ohio National Guardsmen were called out today to replace striking prison guards at the state penitentiary in Columbus. The guards walked out in a dispute for higher wages. So far, officials say there's been no serious disruption in the normal prison routines.
These will be great for bird watching.
Norman.
Hey, it's a white-crested lather waster.
I only used a squeeze. It's for our concentrate. See?
Hey, it didn't break.
See any unusual birds?
Just a cute chick in my own backyard.
Oh.
Hi. I'm Eddie Albert. If I seem a little out of place, it's probably because laundry is just not my line. But you don't have to be an expert to see that Biz, Procter & Gamble's new pre-soak invention, is better than other enzyme soakers. You see this tough berry stain? Soak one just like it in another enzyme soaker, and you'll still see berry stain after it's washed. Soak an identical stain in Biz, it washes out. Test Biz yourself on tough laundry problems. You'll see. Biz is better.
One target of campus rebels has been the Reserve Officer Training Corps, the college program which furnishes about 1/3 of the nation's military officers. Defense Secretary Laird today stated willingness to change some ROTC features which have come under attack, but he said he would not allow the program to be degraded. The changes would shift some military aspects of the ROTC from campus to summer camps. President Nixon's chief advisor on Vietnam today met with a delegation of the college student body presidents and campus editors who recently signed an anti-draft declaration because of opposition to the war. Dan Rather reports.
The 8 students invited to the White House represented 250 campus leaders who have vowed not to be drafted. The group had asked to see President Nixon. He was not present, but his chief foreign policy advisor, Dr. Henry Kissinger, was, and so were presidential assistants John Ehrlichman and Bud Wilkinson. Speaking for the students as they came out, the editor of the University of Chicago student newspaper, Roger Black.
They seem to be listening to us. They seem concerned. They seem concerned that the war come to an end. They're concerned for peace. But I don't think we're very much closer when we went in, when we came out than when we went in. The basic difference, I think, is over a matter of time. Dr. Kissinger repeated a number of times that we really should give them more time, be patient. Well, most of us have to face the draft right now, and we have to make the decision right now whether we are going to serve in a war that we think is unjust and immoral. Dr. Kissinger said that if we came back a year from now and talked to him again, and the war was still in the same position, and we were still in the same position, he would really have no moral argument against us.
Asked whether he thought that getting a White House hearing for his views was encouraging, Black thought a moment and replied, yes, the fact that they listened is mildly encouraging. Dan Rather, CBS News, Washington.
In South Vietnam, enemy troops ambushed an American truck convoy 55 miles north of Saigon. They shot down 2 of a number of helicopter gunships called to the rescue. 2 crewmen were killed and 3 injured. In the ground engagement itself, 4 Americans and 11 North Vietnamese were killed. The U.S. command reported that 17 helicopters now have been downed in the South in the past 7 days. House Republican leader Ford today charged that opponents of the Safeguard anti-ballistic missile system want a weak and disarmed nation. Emerging from a White House meeting with the president, Ford said he sensed a certain concert in the opposition to the ABM, the development of a new strategic bomber, and chemical and biological warfare experimentation. And rhetorically, Ford demanded whether the opponents want to unilaterally disarm America. The defensive missile controversy will be the subject of an hour-long broadcast, the ABM, by CBS Reports later tonight over most of these CBS stations.
For headache pain, could anyone improve on Bayer aspirin, make it faster or stronger? Let's see. There's no sense looking for a stronger ingredient because aspirin is the strongest pain reliever you can buy. Combining other drugs wouldn't help, nor would buffering add speed or strength or gentleness. No one has ever improved on Bayer aspirin. Bayer is 100% aspirin, and aspirin is the strongest pain reliever you can buy.
When you have acid indigestion, every second counts. So count on instant-acting Phillips tablets. Phillips tablets go to work in seconds. With one of the fastest stomach settlers ever discovered, each small Phillips tablet neutralizes more excess stomach acid than the leading antacid tablet that comes in a roll. So for fast relief from acid-upset stomach, when every second counts, count on instant-acting Phillips tablets.
The battle for the presidency of France has begun. 2 candidates for the office vacated by Charles de Gaulle announced today. More are expected. First to come out was Georges Pompidou, the former premier under de Gaulle, and he received an enthusiastic endorsement from Gaullist deputies in the National Assembly. He said, if elected, he would continue the broad outlines of de Gaulle's foreign policies. Next to announce was the socialist mayor of Marseille, Gaston Defferre. Fears of a financial crisis in the wake of de Gaulle's resignation eased today. On the Paris free market, the price of gold dropped from an all-time high, and the franc staged a recovery. The Soviet government newspaper Izvestia praised de Gaulle today and said his defeat had nothing to do with his anti-NATO stand. In the Middle East, Israeli jets bombed and strafed Arab gun positions inside Jordan today, and a spokesman in Amman claimed that one of the planes was shot down. The Israelis denied any losses. On the diplomatic front, Arab diplomats expressed concern that they might lose France's support as a result of de Gaulle's resignation. Yesterday, Pope Paul VI announced the establishment of a new theological commission to investigate and define that sometimes thin line between heresy and legitimate innovation. The move comes at a time of profound change in the Roman Catholic Church. One of the problems facing the Vatican is the growing number of priests who are demanding greater change. Tonight, in the first of three reports, CBS News reporter Ponchita Pierce takes a look at some of these alienated priests.
We were playing God for people, and you became a God yourself in your own thinking. Yet it wasn't real. There was something wrong with this, and I think it took a long time for me to recognize this, but the realization came, and I guess I don't want to play God.
Good afternoon, Barron's Reestablishment. Can I help you?
Douglas Mooney was in the priesthood for 15 years. Then he left. And he came here to Bearings for Reestablishment, an organization which helps former clergy readjust to the secular life. It aids them in finding jobs and apartments, and it offers friendship and understanding. No one really knows how many men have left the priesthood or plan to leave, but at least 2,500 came to this organization alone last year for help. Many think that when a man leaves the priesthood, it is because he wants to marry. But the reasons are far more complex.
And again, where they felt they knew best, they could lead your life. And I think for a long time I accepted this. And after a while I just couldn't. I'm a man, and I want to be treated as a man. We're being treated as children.
In the past, if a man decided to leave the priesthood, they'd figure, well, he's an alcoholic, or there's a very evil woman lurking around a corner. There has to be a woman in it. Or maybe it's drugs, or some emotional problem that he can't handle. This isn't true. It's really not. There's no evil woman lurking around a corner. There's no drugs. There's no drink. None of this.
A year ago, John Kavanaugh left the Passionist religious order where he had been a priest for 10 years. 3 months later, he landed a $12,000 a year advertising job. He thought about leaving the priesthood 2 years before he made his decision.
I have a pet theory that the walls of this structure have to come tumbling down. They have to disintegrate. Because the new structure, the new church, is going to be built on the ashes of the old structure. I almost feel at times that one of the ingredients of the new world, or the new church, or any new structure, is the ashes of the old. And it's very difficult to say this because I have many friends who are in the priesthood, close friends, and they're tremendous people, and I really like them. And they're going to suffer, because in order for this to come about, this destruction, they have to suffer.
Not all dissatisfied priests are leaving. Father Joseph Burns wants to stay, but feels he cannot function under the priesthood's present structure. In an unusual move, he has petitioned Rome to become a worker priest. He wants to remain a priest, but to work in a secular job and be released from the vow of celibacy.
Christ didn't stay in a rectory. He didn't stay in a cathedral. He was up and down that little country. He was in and out on the mountains and in the little wine shops. He was with the good guys and he was with the bad guys. He was everywhere. I think some of us have a tendency to let ourselves be locked in with the good guys in the safe corner. And that's not where the world is.
Hi, Mr. Lear. Hello there. How are you?
Hi. For 3 days a week, Father Burns works in the New York City Department of Hospitals as a job counselor for minority employees having labor management problems. While more conservative churchmen regard Burns' secular work as radical, even rebellious, he feels it is the only road open for priests trying to give meaning to their lives.
Pope John opened up windows, he opened up doors, he opened up neighborhoods, he opened up new worlds. And this was great. We all got a whiff of that fresh air. But air pollution can come into many areas, and sometimes we can be suffocated by the old air, and the new air doesn't have a chance to really stay with us. We need maybe an air conditioner to refreshen us all over again. Pope John was beautiful.
Of the nearly 60,000 Catholic priests in America, only a small minority has chosen to leave the priesthood, but the number is increasing. For those who do not leave, there is the challenge to attempt change from within. And officially, the Catholic Church seems to encourage this idea, that criticism of the priesthood need not mean alienation from it. We talked to Father James Pender, the National Catholic Office of Radio and Television.
The church is an institution, an organization, in a world of institutions and organizations that are being very widely and very frequently criticized today. And criticism can be a very good thing. John Gardner, former Secretary of Health, Education, and Welfare, he was talking about some other consideration, but it fits here. He said, the trouble very often is that we have too many unloving critics and uncritical lovers. And the church needs, as other organizations and institutions need, the church needs within its ranks loving critics, critical lovers, people who will be determined to keep abreast of things, to renew, to answer the petition that's put to them, get involved, be related to the world, have this divinely revealed religion clearly a thing of secular relevance. Let's criticize what we do and how we do it. Let's criticize ourselves for this overriding reason, to do it better, to do it more authentically as Christians, to do it with more love. And this is the hallmark of it all, the Christian concept and translation of love.
I must come back to the other question of what will be the result of it all, these men leaving.
I didn't bring my crystal ball. Can't say.
The growing number of priests who are leaving cannot be ignored by the church, nor the fact that fewer men are entering the seminaries. These defections could lead to a serious shortage of priests. They are already challenging the church to redefine and restructure its priesthood. For the men who leave, there are problems of another kind. We'll have details in our next report. Conchita Pierce, CBS News, New York.
The House Judiciary Committee today voted in favor of direct popular election of presidents. By vote of 28-6, the committee approved a proposed constitutional amendment to do away with the Electoral College. Such an amendment would require two-thirds approval by each House of Congress and ratification by 38 states. The surprisingly strong opposition of an economy bloc today forced withdrawal from the Senate floor of a bill to raise the pay of congressional leaders. The measure, previously passed by the House, was sent back to a Senate committee. The Dow Jones Industrial Average closed sharply higher on the New York Stock Exchange today, volume heavy, 14.75 million shares. The New York Index gained 39 cents. The American Exchange Index was up 24 cents. Treasury Secretary David Kennedy has been under congressional criticism for holding on to a substantial block of stock in the Chicago bank he headed before coming to Washington. Chairman Wright Patman of the House Banking Committee, among others, has accused him of conflict of interest. Well, today, the Treasury Department announced that Kennedy now has sold that stock, $1,200,000 worth. The Treasury spokesman said he suffered a huge personal loss in the transaction.
I have lifted sand and carried salt, but there is nothing which is heavier than debt. Akar 550 BC. Lack of money is trouble without equal. Rabelais, 1534. Thrift, Horatio. William Shakespeare, 1600. Whatever you have, spend less. Samuel Johnson, 1776. Never spend your money before you have it. Thomas Jefferson, 1817. No ticky, no washi. Lun Fung, 1849. Live according to your means. Alfred Henderson, 1869.
Amen. Volkswagen, 1969.
A Chilean national airliner tried to make a radar landing in Santiago today during a heavy rainstorm, but somehow it touched down a little too soon. 13 miles short of the runway, as a matter of fact. Fortunately, none of the 65 passengers, including the Chilean finance minister, was seriously injured in that bumpy landing. After a White House meeting today, Senate Minority Leader Dirksen said that President Nixon soon will propose new laws dealing with obscenity. A key point, Dirksen said, will involve modification of postal regulations to attack pornography sent through the mails. President Nixon's tough statement on campus disorders came as he completed his first 100 days in the White House, a traditional measuring point of a new administration. Eric Severide uses the occasion to measure the problem Mr. Nixon addressed. Eric?
President Nixon said today that free education will not survive in this country if we compromise with lawlessness and surrender to force on the campuses. He did not dwell on what the federal government can do about it. The federal statute against persons crossing state lines to create riots is extremely difficult to enforce and may have to be reworded. Mr. Nixon's Secretary of HEW is suggesting that college presidents be relieved of law enforcement responsibilities and that the federal administration will, at a minimum, establish a clearinghouse for advice to college administrators in handling disorder. The new wave of worry goes beyond the present violence to the possible long-term effects. The President today touched upon this. He said students ought to have a voice in determining courses and rules, but under no circumstances can they be given control of colleges. This is the shadow now on the horizon. This is the fear that has prompted some faculty protests and resignations at Cornell. These educators are convinced that both Cornell and Harvard have suffered an educational Munich. The problems there may be diminished for a time by what these protesting professors call a surrender to force, but the examples set are likely to put other colleges against the wall. General student dominance of colleges will drive them in the direction of Latin American colleges, in many of which both teaching and learning standards are abysmally low. The scenario can be written in advance. First comes greatly enlarged admission, regardless of their prior preparation, of underprivileged youths whose lack of qualification may be no fault of their own, but who cannot cope with existing standards of study. Next comes passing grades for all or no grading, then degrees for all, regardless of accomplishment, and finally the total worthlessness of a college degree for anybody. A postscript would eventually follow, the creation of more small private colleges to preserve standards. To avoid this pattern, there will be increased pressure now for early remedial training of the new crop of students before they take on the tougher coursework, and conceivably more pressure for an end of the traditional movement of youngsters straight from high school into the universities, to be replaced by a pattern of 1 or 2 years of working at a job first, an interregnum to ease the transition out of adolescence, the most unstable period in a person's emotional development for any generation. Walter?
And that's the way it is. Tuesday, April 29th, 1969. This is Walter Cronkite, CBS News. Good night.
No more fried chicken? Don't.